Okay, right, here we are again. We are back. Welcome, everybody. This is the We Quit Booze Brothers, which is a podcast where we try to have honest, no fluff conversations about our various experiences of quitting alcohol. And with me, as always, is my brother Matt. Hello, Matt.
Good morning, Mark. Yep, as you know, we always do this from two separate countries, except today it's even more different because Mark is in Spain, Mallorca, to be more precise. So that's not a background he's put on there. It's actually where he is. So, yep.
This is
And
real.
you
Yeah,
didn't do
that's
very
right.
well in
Yeah.
this week, though, did you? So not as good as Paris has been amazing. So there you go. But that will soon change. Next week it's rain. So
Yeah.
hopefully you'll get.
Yes, I mean beautiful Mallorca. If you if you're not, that's in the Balearic Islands, sort of off the coast of Spain. So it's a Spanish island. Anybody that lives in the UK will know, or most of Europe will know. But if you're outside of Europe, you might not know. But yeah, it's beautiful, beautiful place. But it is raining today, so well, but let's not talk about the weather because I feel like
Right.
that's all we ever do. So, getting into the meat and potatoes of this topic again, as always, with anything to do with quitting alcohol, endlessly fascinating. I think one of the biggest challenges we have with this podcast is trying to keep talking to as limited because once you start going down these rabbit holes, it is just such an endlessly fascinating topic and subject, I think, in the world that we live in today. But conversation we want to have today is how do you approach, how do you work with somebody, how do you deal with a situation where you have somebody in your life who is you think has got an issue with drinking, where the drinking is becoming problematic. Now, what's interesting about this subject is I was sort of thinking about this during the week, and I thought, well, problem with that is that for a lot of people who listen to this podcast, they are the person who has the issue, or they are the person who wants to stop.
Yep.
But I think what's interesting about this topic is this applies to you. The person in your life who has a drinking problem could equally be you. So a lot of what we're going to talk about here is very relevant. And the other thing I want to say about this is just to sort of point out a lot of what we talk about on this podcast. There's a lot of things that are just based on scientific research. A lot of it's based on published reports or studies, but a lot of it is just our opinion. A lot of it is
Yep.
just our experience. So don't some of the things that I'm going to say today, just remember that this is based on my experience, and we've got experience of this because both Matt and I have been through this. I'm 8 years into it. I think Matt is about 6 years, and so
Yep.
the conditions that I'm going to describe to you are very much based on my experience. And in my experience, you've got two. When it comes to have you got a problem with drinking, there's lots of layers to it, but ostensibly, I would say there's two types of person, and I think I was both of those. I think I went through both of these phases. The first one is somebody who kind of demonstrably, obviously, does have an issue with drinking. It's becoming problematic. Either they're tired, it's affecting their day to day, they're drinking too much, it's bad for their health. Might even be worse than that, but they're just not prepared to admit it. They're just in denial. They are not hearing it. They're that sort of, you can see that that person is drinking too much, but either they are just not talking about it outwardly or even inwardly. They're just, no, drinking's fine. I'm not hearing it. This is who I am. This is what I do. It's part of my identity. I'm a drinker. That's what I do. I socialize, I drink, and no one's going to get in the way of that. Just in funny and interest, I just suddenly thought about it. Actually, we often talk about recommending movies. One just fabulous, fabulous movie to watch on this subject is Leaving Las Vegas.
Mhm.
Nicolas Cage. If you haven't seen that movie, go see that. There's a line in that when he meets this sort of love interest in the story, and at one point he turns around to her and says, "You can ask me anything, but you can never ask me to stop drinking." So it's sort of that really kind of powerful. But anyway, that's I digress. That's not quite on point, but maybe we'll come back to that.
Yep.
The second type is somebody who has kind of become conscious of the problem. And I think both Matt and I progressed into this. This is where you definitely start thinking about it yourself. You said this before, Matt. You talked about I started Googling is drinking a bottle of wine a night, bad for your health? You
Yeah.
become interested in, you get some pains. You start to think, hang on a minute, this might be problematic. You even might start talking to your loved ones about it. Certainly I did. I started talking to my wife about it. I remember routinely I'd get to sort of Monday, Tuesday, I'd be absolutely exhausted, and I'd be on the phone to her. I just said, I just, I've got to stop this. I'm so tired. This is really, really impacting me. And so when it comes to dealing with somebody who has a drink problem, you first of all got to figure out, where are they? Are they prepared to talk about it? Are they in denial, or are they prepared to be in discussion about it? And here's the biggest truth that I want to give to you. If you either it's you or you're dealing with somebody who has a problem with drinking, let me just say this to you. You cannot stop for them. You can't. And the other thing is you cannot make them stop. You just cannot do it. Right? So don't for 1 second think you can. You've got, I would say there are 3, but there's probably 4 strategies available to you when it comes to this issue. The first one is you can kind of go to war with that person. You can argue with them, you can shout at them, you can tell them how disappointed you are in them. You can fight them. You can try to fight them into submission. Okay. That's strategy number 1. That's an option. Strategy number 2 is you just decide to ignore it. And just ignore it. Just put up with it. Just let them. And do you know what? I don't like it. It's causing problems, but I'm just gonna ignore it. The third one is you can try to collaborate with them, and you probably guess is to sort of figure out where I'm going to suggest and try to recommend you go in all of this. There is a fourth one, which is a little bit more drastic. You can leave. You can leave them, and I'll hand over to you, Matt, because we'll come back to this. But what I would say to you is, if somebody in your life is becoming a problem drinker, there's layers to that. They can just drink too much and it's affecting their health, and it might be affecting the family and all the rest of it. If they become violent, let's say, then you've got to leave. You've got to move on. It sounds harsh, but it's the kindest thing you could do for you and for that person. If somebody is drinking heavily and when they're drunk, they become violent, towards you or towards other people, the best thing you can do is leave. So this is quite a big one, I know, but I wanted to set the scene, and we'll come back to it and we'll talk about, the strategies and kind of what worked for me, and I think what worked for you, Matt, and sort of how this works. But as I said, don't assume for 1 second that this is just related to dealing with somebody else. Yes, it is. And this will help you if you've got somebody in your life who's, got a problem with alcohol. But it also is, if that person in your life is you, then this will help you, I think, to kind of assimilate that you're thinking when it comes to kind of what next and how do I deal with this.
Yeah, I think you've really summed up the phases of how you can help and where people can be at. My book, I put a dedication page in my book, Man Gets Sober. I think most of you have heard of it by now. And actually the first part that I write is, this book is dedicated to my family. I didn't do it for them, but without them, I wouldn't have been able to do it for myself. And to me, that was really, really key, in that to help someone that has a problem. My view is that shouting doesn't work. You have to show some empathy, love, and understanding. They've got addicted to a highly addictive substance that is available in the open market. It's freely available. Now, rightly or wrongly, that's where they've ended up. So that first phase, I think, is important, is start with that. Encouragement is the way. There's nothing worse, and this is honestly speaking from experience. I think you felt the same way, and I'm sure people listening, watching will absolutely agree with this. The worst thing you can do to someone who has a drinking issue is point things out when they're drinking. So if they're drinking and they go for another drink and you go, you're not going to have another drink, are you? Jesus Christ, it's 11 o'clock at night. Red rag to a bull. You are going to, that's not the right time, not the right thing to do, in my opinion. that haven't you had enough? Those questions that you get. It used to hit what I call my bucket button. So actually, it would make things worse because I'd be like, in my mind, I'd be thinking, fuck you. Who are you to tell me that? I'm an adult. I can do what I want. If I want to go and buy another bottle of wine, I will. So that is not the time. That's not the place. The time is, when, hopefully, obviously it's ideal when there's not alcohol involved, so it could be a weekday, it could be a morning. And I think it's really about, just showing people what they can have, talking about maybe before, everyone had a period when they weren't, struggling with drink. Talk about those times. Talk about, wouldn't it be, wouldn't your life be better if you didn't drink? But it'd been in a nice way. Role models, I think, can be really useful. Probably we all know someone who doesn't drink. We all maybe have famous people. You maybe have, a fan of a cinema actor or a musician, who's maybe been through this sort of thing, and you can, steer them towards that. But I think also we have to mention that that doctors, of course, can play a part in this. But I think what you've said is absolutely true. That the reality is you're better off guiding, you're better off helping, you're better off, trying to get them to see, but it has to come from within them, and if that person cannot stop, or more importantly, doesn't want to, because it's an addiction and that's powerful and it's hard, but at the end of the day, there is a choice element in this. And if that person is not willing to make any choices towards being helped, then you need to think about you. You need to think about your life. You only get one chance. You only get one life. And if it really is having a terrible impact on you and your family and your children, there is just no effort, then you're right. I think, separation is one way of doing things. And maybe, give that is another tact as well, which is, bearing the reality of what is happening in front of someone's eyes, saying that, you've lost your family, you've lost me, you've lost everything, over to you, because I'm not going to be here anymore.
The shock. That's why I said, there are times when, leaving, moving on, and it could be a temporary thing. It could be we're just not here now. We're moving ourselves away from this.
Have a think about it
and sit in it and live with it, because if that person is somewhat in denial, they do need that wake-up call, don't they?
Yeah, I really do think so. Yeah, absolutely. But really, that start with, as I say, understanding, empathy, helping. I still believe, even if you are at the point of, I can't stay here anymore, probably shouting is still not the right way. It just doesn't solve anything. If someone was talking to me about this a long time ago, but and I've done it and I feel guilty, and we've all done it probably, is shouting at your children. I remember my son once broke his bed. Like, he was in a terrible mood, and he almost did it to enrage us, to prove a point. And of course, what happens? You go in, you shout at him for breaking his bed and things like that. And then you look at that situation, you think, I am a 6'2" adult leaning over my child, shouting, almost in his face. There's no physical, violence, of course, but would that situation ever happen or be acceptable if it was the other way around, and him being an adult shouting at me, like in the workplace or anything? No, you'd be fired. You'd be asked to leave. You'd be, so I guess what I'm going with that is, try and put yourself in the other person's shoes. What would be a good way for them to listen and to be talked to?
Yeah,
I mean, shouting isn't the way. That's where I'm going.
No, and it's really difficult when you're if you're in that situation and you're dealing with somebody. But I can just tell you, from my experience, kind of what happened with me. There were times when I got the really frosty reaction from My wife, sometimes would wake up on a Saturday morning with a massive hangover, been drinking far too much the night before. I'd wake up late. There'd be a mess where I'd sort of, just got up, and sometimes she would just leave it there just to sort of prove a point. And then I'd know that she'd just left, there'd be just like, general shit just lying around a chair or whatever, because I was so drunk I just got up and went to bed or whatever. And then that I went through these sort of various stages of, first of all, I'd be annoyed and angry, and it was just the whole situation was not great. But the things that I remember really started to help me were I sort of really palpably remember being at work on a Monday or a Tuesday and feeling fucking exhausted from the weekend of drinking, just getting to that time. And I'd often phone my wife and we'd talk about it. And I remember she used to say to me, I remember a couple of times she said, the thing is, Di, she said to me, my heart just goes out to you because I can see how hard you're working. And then I know you desperately need rest. You desperately need sleep and recuperation, and then you're just doing this to yourself at the weekends, and it's killing you. And that really resonated with me, because a few things really. I mean, first of all, I kind of felt like she was on my side. I felt there was some love and some support, and that really, really important. And I want to just sort of go back to the strategies that I think are available to you. Like I said, you can fight and you can scream and you can go to war. The risk is that will actually have the opposite impact in my experience. Like I said, this is my opinion, my experience. If you shout and you scream, particularly when they're drinking, it's a no-no. Unfortunately, it's likely to backfire. Ignoring it, I don't think, is a real strategy either, because you're not really helping the person. If it's impacting you, I've seen I've seen in my own friend group and family group scenarios where people aren't dealing with things. They've just allowed them to kind of and you just think, why didn't you deal with that? Why didn't you deal with that? The leaving them one is quite extreme. We've talked about that. So really your best option is to try to collaborate. So then it's into, well, how the fuck do I collaborate? Like, what do I do? And the sort of language that I think you can try to use is, you've got to have, I always say have these conversations in the soft tissue areas. Don't deal with these in triggered moments. Don't bring these things up when that person's drinking or when that person's hungover. When you're in the car, when you're driving along, and there's just apropos to nothing specific that's happening at the time. Talk about, you're allowed to bring these things up. And what I would suggest is that you outline to that person your concerns. Why are you worried? I would say to somebody that, just worried for you because I want you to be happy. I'm worried for you because I remember the person you were before you drank. I'm really worried about you because you're not the man that I married when you're drinking, or you're not the woman that I married. And how do you feel about that? Like, ask them, does it worry you? Does it worry you? And if you're at the point where that person is talking about it and is then you're going to get them to sort of open up about what is concerning them. What are they worried about? Where do they, and in my experience, it was, I'm worried. I'm worried that I'm going to screw this career up. I'm going to screw this opportunity up. I'm worried that I'm going to alienate you. I'm worried that my relationship with my kids. I mean, you talked about shouting and screaming at your kids. One of the massive benefits I found when I stopped drinking is I never shout at the kids anymore. I mean, my kids are all grown up now, so they're, not that makes you not want to shout at them sometimes, but that was one of the big differences. My mood became so much more even keeled.
So much more tolerant of things, and
so much
reason.
So I sort of outlined all of the things that I was worried about, and that's really the critical thing. If you can try to find a conversation or an area or a place where you can be having conversations with that person about the things that they're concerned about. The next thing you want to be saying to that person is say, okay, look, me too, I'm worried about it. So, what can we do? What do you think we can do? What are our options here? And you just collaborate. It's not going to happen overnight, but work in the soft tissue, work with love and support. And like I said, remember, this person could be you, but I see some of the comments on our, hate for yourself isn't going to work here. Loathing for yourself is not the way to treat it. You've got to find love and support and be caring, because like Matt said, this is a fucking addictive, psychoactive, awful, awful fucking drug, which is not only freely and legally available, it is pushed on you by society, by
Yeah.
everybody. Like society expects you to do this thing. And then they kind of go, oh, right, so you got addicted to it. Oh, right, well, it's causing you problems. Yeah, fucking right, it's causing fucking problems because it's fucking awful. And I'm fucked because I'm doing it and I don't want to be in this situation. So kindness is the answer. And, we'll keep doing this. The reason we do this, the reason we have these conversations is because we've seen the world before, we've seen the world after. Life is fucking hard enough without making
Yeah,
it more complex with booze.
absolutely. No, I don't have much to add to that because I think you've really spelt it out in just the most eloquent way. But I think one thing that's interesting is, you've been through it, I've been through it, I'm sure lots of our listeners have been through it, but you actually go from pupil to teacher as well once you have become sober. And the amount of people, we've had this conversation before, but you get that knock-on effect. People start to ask the questions, and there's nothing better than when you start to see that people who don't drink don't have a boring life, and that there is so much to do, and that triggers interest. And I think it really is about finding that encouragement, and that's kind of what my wife did with me as well, which was, she didn't shout and scream. She made it sort of clear that she was getting to the point where you know
Enough was enough.
you needed to do something about this. But it was that reminder. It's like that, you're better than this. You've got so much to give. And the question actually as well, which she asked me, and I think was really truthful, and that's a good question to ask is, you can't be happy with this, because and you can't. Honestly, no matter who you are, there are days when you're a drinker and you wake up and you feel like crap and you question it. No matter who you are, no matter how much you enjoy drinking, there are those days. And when you get it on that right timing, and they say, surely you can't be enjoying this yourself. This must be, as your wife said to you, this must be tiring for you. This must be just, and it's true. And you do think, I just don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to live like this anymore.
No, 100%. No. Okay. All right. Well, look, I think we'll leave it there. Covered a lot. There's always loads more to say. So I would just keep doing this. Is there anything else that you wanted to?
No. I think all good. I think we've been doing a little film thing, but you mentioned Leaving Las Vegas. Let's leave it with that one.
I would recommend that one. I was going to do a book review actually, but I'll do that next week or whenever. But it's a really, really good movie. If you haven't seen Leaving Las Vegas with Nicolas Cage, and Elizabeth Shue, I think is the female actress in it. Go check it out. It's fantastic. So great. Look, okay. We'll leave it there. As always, as we say, never quit quitting. Thanks very much for all the comments. We got quite a lot last week, which was really lovely.
Yeah, keep them coming. Really, they're great. And any other topics anyone wants to cover, hopefully, this came from one of our listeners. So if there's anything else, let us know. We'll do our best to cover them.
Yeah, we talked about, the sort of struggle with, when you're trying to quit, you've got to try and find a bit of kindness. You've got to try and find a bit of support, dare I say, a bit of love. That's what this is all about. If you're not getting it anywhere else, you can get it here. Listen to these podcasts because this is done to try to help everybody go through what we went through and experience all the benefits that we've experienced. So keep it kind, people. Keep it nice, and until the next time, it's goodbye from me.
It's goodbye from me.
It's goodbye from him. See you soon. Cheers.